Hey guys, I'm Jeremy, and here's my trip to Kazakhstan, a country in the middle of Central Asia. And on this trip, I biked a few days, and then I ended up taking a crazy train ride across the country because I didn't really feel like biking for 4 weeks through a desert right after I'd been hit by a car in Kyrgyzstan like 3 weeks before. So, pretty interesting trip. So I had just left Kyrgyzstan, and as I mentioned, just like, a couple weeks before that, I got hit by a car there, and I had to get a new bike and, continue on with my journey. And so when I got to Kazakhstan, I knew there wasn't like a huge difference in culture and stuff. They speak the same language and look pretty similar and stuff like that. A few other little things to see, but basically pretty much a desert through most of the country except for the border of Kyrgyzstan in the east, kind of near China and Mongolia or whatever. So I knew there was going to be a ton to see because I do, like to go to the mountains. And I would have did Tajikistan through Iran to like Turkey. But Americans can't easily get the visa for Iran, especially if you're cycling. Maybe if you're not cycling, you can. And then if I went up through Kazakhstan, through Russia and around, it's also difficult to get the Russian visa, especially while you're traveling. And even if I went through Russia, I still wanted to kind of go down towards Turkey. I don't think that border near like Chechnya and the Caucasus Mountains is even open for travelers, or if it is, it's quite difficult. So I figured at some point I would fly, like I would do Kazakhstan and then fly to like Armenia. And, within the first 2 or 3 days, I'd stop at some places and people are having drinks, for lunch or whatever, beers or vodka, and then getting in their cars and going. And obviously after I've been just hit by a car, it was like, man, this isn't good. And I'd even seen one situation where like, you've got the 18-wheeler in front and they're going up a hill, and you've got a car behind the 18-wheeler and then like an SUV. And so the SUV was just about to pass both of them, and then the guy in the car went first. And so he kind of cut off the SUV. And when they got around, like, I don't know what the guy had. I actually thought it was a gunshot because I thought it was smoke, but he had something that was either, I don't think it would be dirt, like powder or something, or threw it at the guy in the car, and the guy almost drove off the road and stuff. And so that definitely did give me a good feeling. I wasn't going to see anything amazing, and a lot of drunk drivers and road rage on these long roads through the desert. And I was even worried about getting an accident, not just because I had just gotten in an accident, but I'd heard of other people getting hit in Kazakhstan. There was one story of a French guy who left from France, got all the way to Kazakhstan, got hit by a car. I think he even had like his spleen removed or something like that. Like, pretty bad accident. Obviously, he's lucky to be alive. He went back like a year or two later and he got hit there again. So, yeah, I was like, I'll take the train. So I got to Shymkent within 2 or 3 days, which is a big city of about 500,000 people. And I wasn't even sure if I needed to do this, but they have all these odd rules from the Soviet Union times, and I was supposed to like even though I had my visa and some stamp, like I needed to get that stamp or something verified within like 5 days, or I get like $150 fine when I left the country. So I had to find this needle in a haystack, basically, find this little government office in this big city. So I went around for a while, and obviously most people don't know English there. Their first language is the local language, and then they have Russian as a second language, so no one really knows English. So eventually I finally figured out where this place was. And then right around there I'd seen a travel agent. I was kind of inquiring about flights to Armenia, and she was mentioning prices and stuff. It wasn't that cheap, but I could go from Aktau right on the Caspian Sea. And I figured I would just, bike for a few more days and then just hop on the train and go through the country. That way I would still see the country, but I wouldn't spend, I think it would almost take a month because it was about 3,000 kilometers, and they don't even have buses there because the road only goes out to a certain point. To get to there, it's like a dirt road. So it would be a really tough journey in hot weather and stuff like that too. So I was like, no big deal. I'll just get the train. Yeah, Shymkent was pretty random. Like the hotel I was at, there was like a bar or something next door where, the girls are trying to get you to buy them drinks because they'll get extra money for that. And then of course they're going to try to get picked up and stuff. And Then there's like these guys, I don't know if they were from the Special Olympics, but they had come in without limbs and they were hanging out. And then I went like back to my room and I'd seen like people coming in and out of rooms a lot too. So there was like, I don't know, obviously some drug dealing or something going on. So a little bit bizarre, but interesting experience. And then it was only like 2 or 3 days I biked to get to Turkistan, which is one of the biggest highlights in Kazakhstan. Basically some old mausoleums and stuff like that, and some old buildings and stuff. It was pretty enough, but not too much to do there. And I was waiting to get the train ticket set up, and I didn't realize it was going to be a huge hassle. Like, they were all sold out. I had no idea. I just assumed that, you know, like in China, they've got a million trains going everywhere all the time, and it's not too big of a deal. Although I have had some times where there can be issues where it gets booked. And yeah, that probably was around the same time. At the end of summer, all of the students are going back to either their university or hometown or traveling, and then other people are going back to, you know, start work or whatever in September. So huge migration at that time, and they don't have a ton of trains. So I had to arrange that, which took a few days, and yeah, it ended up being like 150 or something for that train ride, which is generally more than usual, but it was special circumstances. And the train attendant, basically what they did was they sold their seat, their area where they stay. And so if you get 5 people in there and a couple people on, you know, in the hallways and stuff, you can see how they can make, you know, an extra $1,000 a trip or something. Yeah, and when I was on the way to Turkistan, I'd come up into town to look for a hotel, and a guy pulled up in a white sedan, and I could tell right away he was trashed. And he said he's like a police, maybe he had a badge, but he was off duty basically, trying to get my passport, and I just kept ignoring him, and he kept following me for a couple miles. And I finally got to that hotel and had the girl talk to him and stuff, but yeah, he was trying to get my passport. And in this part of the world, like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and stuff, be careful with your passport or going to bars and stuff at night. Like, people get robbed all the time, or people pretend they're police officers. So that was the case. That was like, you know, 13 years ago, but I assume some of that stuff still happens. So be careful. And also when I was in Turkistan, I hung out for a few days because, like I mentioned, I'm waiting to figure out the train situation, and I didn't want to go to the bars or clubs too much because it's a little dangerous. So I hung out with some of the guys in the hotel. There's like a Spanish guy and a Japanese guy, maybe 1 or 2 people. Small hotel. There's only a few rooms. And actually, that Japanese guy ended up, I don't know, he said he just went to the bathroom and went back to his room, and his wallet, his money was gone. And so I guess he got robbed. I'm not sure if it was from another traveler or something like that. That kind of thing happened to me years ago in Bruges, Belgium, like back in early 2000s, when I went to sleep in a hostel and they took my wallet while I was sleeping. So I was a little paranoid. I noticed my window was open. I was on, I think, the ground floor. And so we had gone out. I think I had a bunch of vodka and booze one night. And so it was funny because the next morning I was like, oh shit, my passport's gone. And I was like freaking out, looking all around. And then I finally found it under the rug. And I was like, damn, I hid that so well the thief couldn't find it or me. You know, because I obviously hid it before I went to sleep. And I forgot I put it there. So anyway, yeah, I got up early to get on that train, and you know, I put the bike in between the cars. There was some area, and yeah, I began my nightmare journey on that train. Like, there was like 4 of us in that little area, and I was the tallest and the thinnest, and I was just crammed in the corner. So I had the least room, even though I was the tallest. And yeah, brutal. You know, it was hot on the train, super overcrowded. As more people came on, of course, they were bringing all their fruit and vegetables and things, so things just got piled up. I guess that journey is something like, I don't know if it's like 36 to 48 hours. I don't think it was over 2 days at least, but yeah, that was 2 days of hell because you can't really sleep, you can't get comfortable. And at least everyone was super friendly on the train. Like the lady, you know, the train attendant was nice. There was at least a few girls who knew a little English I could talk to, and then you know, everywhere else I couldn't really communicate much, but at least they were friendly and I could get food and stuff like that. So when I was in Kazakhstan, it was only like 1 or 2 years after Sacha Baron Cohen made Borat. And so, you know, in Borat, they filmed part of it in like maybe Bulgaria or Romania or something like that. But a big point of that was like he's saying, you know, he was in Kazakhstan. And he said, you know, I hate the Jews, like all this kind of stuff in that movie. And so he gave the impression to the world that it's like this anti-Semitic country and backward and all this kind of stuff, which that's such a crappy thing to do. Like, he could have picked like a fictional country. It could have been Kazakhstan or whatever it could have been. But like, no one even knows about Kazakhstan really, right? So like, for him to put that country in the limelight in such a negative view, obviously the people there weren't too happy. Like, I couldn't speak with this kid very well, but I went up to some kid and we were talking, and it was like, you know Borat. I was like, oh yeah, I know the movie. He's like, I was like, yeah, I get the point. We don't need to communicate in English, but like, yeah, man, they were pissed about that. I actually did think that guy was funny. I like most of his stuff, but he also, like, after being so disrespectful to that country and stuff like that, he came out against free speech. I forget what activist or political person it was, but he made a thing that like, this person shouldn't be able to have free speech. And I was like, you're on the douchebag list of mine. You suck, dude. Finally got to Aktau, which was a nice town. It's on the water there. Pretty nice, but pretty expensive. It's like a rich oil town now. I think back in the day, when it was part of the Soviet Union, it was like for uranium mining and stuff like that. Actually, Kazakhstan was one of the main spots. Like, that desert I was going to bike kind of close to was the main area that they tested their nuclear weapons back in the day. So it's probably another reason why I shouldn't bike and hang out in that area much. And then, yeah, I went to the airport, a couple days later and got on that flight to Yerevan, Armenia. And yeah, that was a big clusterfuck too. I mean, you get to the airport early, and I was one of the first ones there, so it didn't seem too bad. And of course, I've got my bike, which makes it more of a hassle. And it was just one of those situations where there's like no line, and everyone just kind of, you just have like, 100 people all pushed up against. And at some point, I lost my temper a little bit. I was like, what the fuck, dude? And I like just kind of pushed you, and people like moved out of the way. They're like, let this guy through before he starts to throw down. Then I cruised on that flight. It's like 4 or 5 hours, and I ended up in Armenia, which I actually tried to live at for a few months. I'll make the next video about that. And that was a neat experience too. So anyway, yeah, Kazakhstan was cool, super friendly people and stuff. They obviously don't get a lot of tourism. I probably wouldn't recommend the train journey. And actually later on, I was going to do bike trips in Africa and South America, and I was like, oh, I'll take trains in between if I don't want to bike everything. And I was like, no, I'm not doing the train thing again. But yeah, if you're going to go to Kazakhstan, the prettiest areas in the mountains are probably, in the east or kind of the border of Kyrgyzstan. But yeah, if you're around that area, you can check it out. It's definitely a fascinating place. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more content. My channel has a lot of different stuff from my travels around the world, whether hiking or biking, and some of the things over the years I've done, whether I was in the military, commercial fishing in Alaska, or my experience living in China and Taiwan for 15 years. And I was a teacher there and led tours and did all kinds of stuff. So if that stuff's beneficial for you or entertaining, subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Cheers.